In one of our videos, we were introduced to the idea of validation, that we need to validate our code to make sure that it works right. Remember that even though the browser is displaying it correctly, that doesn't make it correct code, and we want to validate it to make sure it's correct. And we went to the validator website and checked it out. Well, turns out in Atom, there is also a ability for us to install a package. So we're going to do File and Settings, and come down here to install. And if you do a search for W3, and I think it's C, there's this package called W3C Validation that will validate your HTML and CSS, which we're going to be doing this module, using W3C validators. So using the standards, the W3C standards, which is what we all adhere to as programmers of websites. So I'm going to go ahead and install this and put the video on pause. I'll be right back. All right, so now my install is done. It says uninstall or disable. Obviously, I don't want to do any of that, but I can in the future. So I'm going to close out this settings tab with the X and go back to my index page and just kind of carry out the last example that I saw in the I showed you in the validator video. I'm going to erase this metachar set and hit save. When I do Control S, then you see this warning pop up. So that package is automatic, that package we just downloaded is automatically doing that validation for me. And here we see that same error message that we saw in the last video, and that we didn't do our character encoding. And so W3C has found one error. So I'm going to put that back in and save, and now I'm seeing no errors were found. So we've got a built-in validator. Either will work, and they're both based on the same standards, so you're good either way. Sometimes there might be a little bit of a discrepancy, so I'm not going to say it works perfectly all the time, but it's a great tool so that whenever you do something new, like let's do this. Let's say I just put in my H1 tag, and I forgot that an H1 tag does not belong in the head. The H1 tag is something I want my viewer to see. Everything I want my viewer to see goes in the body, but I forgot that rule, and I put the H1 in the head tag because I'm thinking it's a header, so I'm going to put it in the head tag, which is erroneous thinking, but I didn't know better. So now I'm going to hit Control S and save, and you can see that, in fact, I got an error message, and it's sometimes error messages aren't the best. They aren't the best at describing exactly what's going on. But at least it's letting me know that I have a problem. And that is part of the hardest part of programming anything, is troubleshooting. It's supposed to work. I'm sure I did it right. Why is it not working? And troubleshooting is always the hardest part. But you have to do your best, and eventually these error messages make sense to you. So it's just practice, practice, practice. And at the best, it's saying stray end tag head, and it's letting me know that that's at line 8. So if I click on line 8, it's ending up here. And the reason why it thinks it's a stray head tag is because a head tag is expecting, the browser is expecting not an H1 tag, so it doesn't understand why is there an H1 tag, which should be followed by a closing body. Where's this head? The head and H1s don't go together. So it's not the best worded error, but at least it gives me some kind of clue. Something is not right above this line. And then hopefully I can put my thinking cap on and think, why would this not be working? And if I'm not sure why it's not working, well, I can always, what's the last thing I did? The last thing I did did this H1 tag. So let me Control X to get it out of there, and then I'll save it. Well, that seems to be working, so that must be my problem. Oh, right, that belongs in the body tag, and so I'm going to save it there. So the other advantage, and I would highly recommend that because you have this error checker here, don't write a whole bunch of stuff and then save it to check the errors. Just do little bits at a time. In other words, maybe I'll add we're going to do image tags soon. So here's a kind of a foreshadowing of how to put in an image. So I'm going to put in IMG, and I can hit the arrow, and then here's the source. So this is actually what's going to be the name of your image. So I always use stitch.jpg. And then if I hit tab, I've got an alt. Here is a picture of Stitch, and you'll be seeing this on an upcoming video. And then instead of putting more stuff, I'm going to Control Save just to make sure, oh good, I did it correctly. In other words, what if I did it incorrectly? What if I had left this source off? Control save. I'm pretty sure that should generate an error, and it does. It says image is missing the required attribute src. And so if I had written a whole bunch of stuff after here, you know, that in this case, it's pretty straightforward. Okay, I know what you're talking about, and I can put in the source. But it's much easier to troubleshoot smaller new bits of code rather than putting a whole bunch of code and trying to figure out where that all came from. Anyway, point of the video was not all of that, blah, blah, blah. The point of the video was that we've got this built-in error checker, which will help eliminate you doing code that even though the browser might be displaying it properly, it may or may not be technically, syntactically correct. So we want to make sure our code is syntactically correct as well as visually pleasing. So there you go.